start recording right now. Okay, it's recording. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview. So I'm in my master's, like doing my master's right now. I'm about to finish. So I have
Mhm.
about 2 weeks left in this master's for marketing.
Wow.
So they asked us to do an interview on someone like a high position executive. So then I thought about you because someone was talking about that Julie was working in marketing, and I was like, all this time I could have been talking to her. So I was like, let me reach out. So let's get started. So let's start. Can you share about how like your career started in marketing and how it led you to be the vice president of supplier and development and marketing at Southern Glazer Wine and Spirits?
Sure. So I've had a very unconventional career path. I never kind of, I didn't go to school for marketing or say I'm a marketer, I want to be marketing. I kind of fell into marketing.
Mhm.
Um, I think I was just a natural born salesperson. A lot of my previous career, I did real estate for a while. So I was really learned how to sell, how to understand the market. And what you realize throughout these different roles is that marketing plays a role in everything, right? And so, when I first started my career 20 years ago, those were, I did real estate, I did various different jobs. And when I got into the wine and spirits business like 16 years ago, um, I started in sales. So from sales, I that was just a natural progression for me. And I really not only enjoyed sales, but the leadership of sales and sales planning and sales strategy. And so I continued to work my way up through more of a learning and development role. And, just any opportunity where I can learn something different about why everything works or how it can be better, and moved my way through that all at Southern Glazers. So,
That's a
fantastic. I think that's also a great learning is when you have when you work for an industry leader and a big company, there's lots of different avenues you can go within the organization. And they're always going to have the fundamental sales, marketing, commercial planning, what we call commercial operations, all those things. But I had an opportunity when our company ended up merging, when Southern Wine and Spirits merged with Glazer family, and they're both family owned companies. And we started a regional structure for the organization and started building like more of a corporate structure. Whereas in the past, even though we were multiple states, each state operated as their own entity. So I had an opportunity there, being out of Florida, to go into an East region role. And the role was East region marketing for
Okay.
fine wine. And
Wow.
I'm like, well, I know fine wine, right? I've been selling it all these years. I know how to train people, leadership, and all that stuff. So I really needed to understand more of that role. And we always had a marketing department. I just never took that path. And they were responsible for all of our planning and our sales planning and strategy and execution. So our marketing world, being in wine and spirits as the distributor, is a very different segment of marketing as a whole. It's a lot more insights, data focused, and really leveraging consumer data. So very CPG, but more execution, versus like what we call the fun creative stuff, right? Like we get the fun creative stuff from the brands,
Mm-hmm.
and we take that and we execute it to sales. So a lot of our insights are follow through, what's the sell rate. So that's kind of how I got into it. With the fine wine, it was great because you really learn they don't have big marketing budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is based on storytelling and product quality. And so that was a really great experience in the East region. And from there, I started managing different portfolios. So I did fine wine. And then I started representing some of our largest spirits companies like the Beam Suntory portfolio, Campari, where you go from fine wine that have no budget and you're literally telling the story to these global brands that have, you know,
Yeah.
unlimited funding as long as the sales come through. They're
Of
like, if you can
course. That's
get,
amazing. Campari, I just learned about Campari recently, and it's like such a great spritz. Such a great
yeah,
spritz.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Aperol Spritz,
Yeah.
that's the leading drink. And, that's a great segue because, you mentioned the drink. So a lot of for the spirit suppliers, and I remember, looking at a couple of your questions on like what
Mhm.
was a campaign.
Mhm.
And I I was thinking about it because we have various different campaigns depending on cultural moments, on social moments, on seasonal and whatnot. And I think the Aperol Spritz, actually, and now that you bring it up, is one of the greatest campaigns.
It's
You see it
amazing.
everywhere.
Everything is like,
Mhm,
if you think about summer, everybody thinks Aperol spritz. It's such
mhm,
a great campaign. I love it. I love it.
mhm.
It's a great
Yeah,
campaign.
it is. They were really smart with it because in the beverage, it's not, there's the campaign, there's the image, there's the product branding, but then there's also the consumption piece, right? So you need people to actually consume it and not just visualize it. So once they consume it, is it, meet up to what the campaign was? And I think Aperol does that perfectly with the bright orange and the bright colors, and when you drink it, you're like, this, tastes like, or it tastes like what it looks like or feels like.
Yeah,
So
it's very refreshing. I love like their whole branding is amazing. It's amazing.
yeah.
And like when you think Italy, you think Aperol spritz. And that's
Yeah.
like the greatest thing. So the next question is, how have you seen the field of marketing evolve over the course of your career?
Um, Definitely it is so insightful, right? Like the data, the data and the analytics and just that complete digital world. And I mean, even just in the last year with AI, right? It's like all this information that you would just die to have, or, marketing tactics that everybody would do because that's just what you do. You never really had that pulse of the consumer like you do today, right? Like you can already, not only do you understand what the consumer wants, but it's like with all the AI and everything else, it's like you can predict what the consumer wants. And I've seen it just happen so rapidly. And I think it's really just with the advancement of technology and digital and social networking and being able to capture people's behaviors through everyday devices. So yeah, it's in marketing specifically, I've been doing that for about the last 6 7 years, and I could see the drastic change. But even prior to that, when I was in sales, obviously working closely with our marketing team, drastically different.
I think it's definitely like the rise of like social media or AI and everything has definitely changed the way that we see marketing. It's
Mhm,
like, I mean, even when I'm doing assignments for school, it's so helpful because they give you different strategies that I didn't think about.
mhm,
But even like with social media, like now, like viewers rely on these influencers like to be their most authentic self. Like they don't want these people that are very like fake. They want people that are very true to themselves, and they're like earning so much money, like being like just showing their day in their life, or like get ready with me while I tell you about my night last night, you know.
mhm.
So I think it's changed like drastically, even like after like when COVID started, the
Mhm.
rise of like TikTok, the rise of like Instagram and the reels and all of that. It's been
Yeah, the content marketing is just it's a whole nother animal, right? And I for me it's promising because when I think of wine and spirits, a lot of where they participate is very traditional marketing, right? I mean, still the way that they want to interact with consumers, it's still, magazine, TV ads, look and feel, point of sale. I mean, it's very traditional. Some of them are starting to get, do more content marketing. So the current supplier I work with now is Fully Family Wine, and they are a premium wine supplier, all estate wines, but they're really more modern in how they reach the consumer. They have their fully food and wine society that they've created. So it's a very specific group, but kind of like a loyalty group for people that participate in their wine club because most of their wineries based out of Napa and Sonoma. And so they do a lot of that social digital marketing, but even within that realm, it's still very early, right? I don't know that they're doing TikTok and all this stuff, and also like who are those influencers that they're working with, and what are those resources available. There's one, I think it's called Rick Rack, or sorry, I think it's like Rick Rack or something, but it's an actual digital service for digital marketing. And maybe it's not that, it's a different group, but basically they take samples from you. So if you're a wine and spirit supplier, they have a list. I'm say, okay, any of my wines, and anybody can pick, and then a social or a content driver or an influencer would
give a
select the samples, and then it gets sent to them, and they talk about it or they drink it or whatever, and it could end up you know going viral, and it makes a brand, and that's how a lot of them have had success. So you just never know.
Yeah. So there's different apps like I think there's like an influencer or like Skeepers, and there's a bunch of apps, and like a lot of brands have collaborated with those apps and they'll send them products. Like I've even had one in the past where Aveeno, Aveeno,
Mhm.
that brand, they had sent me a shampoo and conditioner. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so like, I feel like an influencer. So then I did a really quick reel, and I posted it, and Aveeno like liked it and everything. And then, yeah, and then I mean, I get packages here and there, but it's really fun. Like, it's really cool.
Mhm.
And I think that, I mean, I might have gotten one person out of my followers to get it, but I mean, imagine if it was like a bigger influencer. I mean, there's like all these new ones here in Miami that are like earning so much money.
Yeah,
Hey, over
and it's
1 million.
always that, yeah, it's always power of that direct sale, being relatable, somebody that you trust. And I feel like that's always existed. It was just not so easily accessible, right? Like we get something we like, we share it with our friends, we tell them about it, and then maybe one goes and buys it. But now it's just,
Yeah.
it can happen in an instant.
Yeah. So, so let's get back to the Aperol, or if you want to share
Mhm.
another particular successful marketing campaign that you've been involved with and what made it successful, and how was like the process within that campaign?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I think I'd like, and I had another thought, but I like the Aperol Spritz campaign. I think that one is just, it's really classic. And the reason why it stands out to me so much is that it has become really global. And, you know, as I mentioned, within our industry, as kind of that middle tier, and alcohol is different in the US, you know, the sales and distribution of alcohol, the regulations are different than any other country in the world. So in the US, we have to be that middle tier. So you can't own the beverage and distribute the beverage. You have to use a middle tier. So with Aperol and that campaign, that really starts from the brand teams, right? So there's so many different segments. And Aperol Spritz was always their go-to drink for Aperol. And the cocktail's been around since
Mhm.
God, right? Since the Belle Epoque area. Like it's one of these classic cocktails. So the way that they kind of reinvented that drink to make it more modernized and really go with that bright coloring and that Italian lifestyle, I think really resonated. But this is a campaign that's constantly having to be updated every year to maintain relevancy, right? And so I think that was a big one. I think the one thing that nobody would really notice as a consumer is that a big part of that campaign was really getting the drink right and made right.
Mhm.
Because what they learned being out in the market and you know the the comparistas that they call them, the drink was made wrong. What they were doing was pouring the Aperol into the glass first and then building it from there and topping it with sparkling. Well, the Aperol is quite heavy. So if you just top it with the sparkling at the top, it still sits on the bottom. So you actually, you know, you want to do it in a different way. And you have to stir it. Otherwise, it doesn't taste like the true Aperol Spritz. So a big part of the campaign was really how to make the drink and how to message that. And then I think the big part was the photography of it, the orange, the bright orange. And if you ever go to any of these activations or food and wine festival, they always have a step and repeat of an Aperol Spritz. And so it really has that social media effect where people go on and take pictures and, you know, all their POS and their swag really represents the campaign. And I think it's just like that 360 approach that made it so successful.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's such a great drink, and I think it even got bigger after, what was it? Do you know the show Emily in Paris? Do you know that show on Netflix?
Yes, yes, yes.
So there was like a part where they had an Aperol Spritz, and then they had this other drink, but everybody, I mean, Aperol Spritz is like the drink of the summer, honestly.
Love that. And I've done, you know, it's funny because another part of it is like the in-person activation, right? Like all the full circle of marketing. And at first, people like that have never seen it or don't know it are kind of like they would never order it. But as soon as somebody orders it and you see those bright glasses of sparkly orange, everybody starts ordering it. So it's always fun doing that. Like you get a couple to drink it, and then 30 minutes later, you look around and everybody has an orange glass.
So, next question is, what are some common challenges you face in your marketing efforts, and what do you do to overcome them?
I think really with my role, and I never really totally got into that, but it's supplier development and marketing. So I end up having to kind of manage the whole chain, the whole product change from procurement to sales, right? And marketing is a big component of that. But I think the biggest challenges is really when I think of a very high level is predicting the consumer, right? And capturing and maintaining the loyalty of the consumer. And I think in a very competitive marketplace, right, where you've got so many different brands, no matter what industry you're in, is how do you not only get in front of the consumer, but how do you build that loyalty? Because so many new things come all the time. And when you think about, some of your favorite products, right? It's like, why are you still using that? Is it because you're always seeing them on social media? Or is it because you have an affinity to that product? And I think that's always going to be the hardest challenge. And I work with so many brands, and I think it's also like really understanding like what is your end game? Who is that consumer that you're going after? And really hyper focus on that. There's so much data and analytics, but things change. And, you might think you're having a lot of success with one demographic, one group, and you've like isolated to others, whereas maybe your success could be threefold, right? I think an advice I've always learned is just because it's green, like, green, red numbers, we all know what that is. Just because it's green, it doesn't mean that you don't do a double click and a deep dive. Because within that green, you can find a lot of opportunities to, you know,
Keep on increasing.
keep on increasing. But sometimes we so focus on what's not working, and we're trying to fix what's not working, and you forget about what is working and how you make it work better. So I think just it's a very 24-hour news cycle marketing. Like you can't ever just, go with your morals or go with what works.
Okay, that's great. That's great. How do you stay up to date with the latest trends and developments in marketing?
We have a lot of,
Like, do you do like market research? Do you have like focus groups?
yeah, I subscribe to a lot of different publications and news outlets. I participate in a couple of marketing conventions. I try to do one a year. I think that for me, the industry specific stuff is so much more relevant with wine and spirits, because it it can translate. Like we're very big on immediate ROI, right? Because I am right at that middle of marketing and sales. So it's really exciting to be able to go and visit our different brands, our brand companies, and hear and see all of their marketing material for the new season, for the new year. So we do a lot of that in person, and a lot of them hire all the best various agencies in the world. So you really get, and these are called like our national sales meeting. I think Beam Suntory does some of the best. I mean, you watch these campaigns and you cry, so that's great. And then we also have a couple of like syndicated marketing tools for our industry. Like Nielsen's is a really big one that we get a lot of our consumer data from. And just our local media outlets that we subscribe to.
Okay, that's great. So what advice would you give to someone looking to pursue a career in marketing?
I would say go for it, and I would say also be very open. I mean, what I've known too is that when you make a decision of the career that you want to be in, and if you're only focused in that, it might not allow you to learn as much, right? Like I encourage some of our teams that's been in marketing to go and do sales, right? Like going and doing different functions. Like right now, I'm learning so much supply chain, because that's another challenge. I mean, that's all relative, right? In the vertical, but supply chain is a huge challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And I think as a marketer, learning these different functions and even doing a role in those functions really help make you a better person, and a better professional. And just like you mentioned, some of these, authentic influencers, a lot of that is selling, right? They are, it is sales, it's marketing, but it's a lot of sales. It's that direct contact.
So you believe that's like a specific skill and experience that you think would be successful in the field of marketing?
Oh, definitely, definitely, for sure. I think one of the biggest challenges and gaps is, especially when you're thinking on a big scale, big global brands, high production, high visibility, is that there's always the disconnect between marketing and sales, right? Does sales drive marketing? Does marketing drive sales? So when you can have that really collaborative way of working where you're really leveraging, I think that's when, that that success happens. So having both roles, and we do that a lot within our organization. We hire people from sales and marketing go back into sales.
Oh, that's great. Okay,
Mhm.
so then last question. What do you see as the future trends in marketing, and how can marketers prepare for them?
The future trends, I mean, I think digital for sure, AI, right? I think really looking at the resources available, but also like how do you capitalize all of them and package it for various organizations and industries that might not have fully maximized it, right? Like, how do you, I think, looking at the trend of how to be more solution based marketing,
Mhm.
right? I think that is going to be really looking at that trend of like being able to translate the trends and translate all the resources available to provide solutions for companies that might not be, so quickly ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for me. I really loved hearing from you. And I mean, there was a time in my life where I wanted to work in like food and like the food and beverage industry because I was working as a bartender for a couple years back in the day. And then I was like, oh, I just want to be like a cool influencer and like work in the brand. So thank you for that. I appreciate you taking the time to do this for me.
You're welcome. All right. Well, we'll talk more and good luck.
Yeah.
And thank you. Keep in touch. I mean, I think we follow each other. We're on LinkedIn, right? So let me know how you're doing along the way. I can't, especially once you get your master's, you have to tell
Okay.
me and put,
Okay. Thank
okay? Take care. Bye, Bianca.